In this video, we're going to start creating our automata assembly by taking a box assembly, an axle, two axle bushings, and a handle, and we're going to create the assembly so that we have the axle that will turn appropriately inside the box. So the first step is to make sure we have an empty assembly that has no parts in it, and add the box, and then we'll start adding the other components. Now remember, if you have an assembly that hasn't been saved and you try to insert something in your current design, it'll give you an error message that says save before inserting components. And we want to make sure we're not modifying the box assembly, because the box assembly is its own component that's going to go into the final assembly. So we'll save our part. I'm going to call this Automata Assembly. And then we'll insert our box assembly. And just like before, when we made the box assembly, we want to ground our first component, but it doesn't work all that well to ground the assembly. So we want to expand the box assembly, right click on the box bottom, because that's the one that's going to be sitting on the table. You'll see the pin right there. And now this whole assembly, no part of this will move. Then we're going to start adding our other components. The first thing that I want to do is insert an axle bushing on the far side. And so right click, insert into current design. And you can see it puts it over here. I'm just going to move it up so it's a little bit out of the way and click OK. And the way this one works, this surface right here is going to sit on the outside of the box. This surface on the side of the bushing will go inside the hole here. So what I want to do is create a joint. And this time, instead of using a rigid joint, I'm going to choose a revolute. A revolute will allow rotational motion, but it won't allow any other motion. So that's going to be as if this is pushed inside the hole and then can only spin around. So revolute, for revolute, we need a surface and also the point that it's going to revolve around. So if you just zoom in and you get this, it'll still want to know the actual location. If you click on a circle, then it'll choose the center of that circle. So we'll go to this circle right here. Now the center of this is what's going to be revolving. We'll do the same thing right here. If I can get it to grab the center of that circle on the outside of the box, you can see it'll show that it can spin around inside the box, but there's no other motion possible. If we revolve it around so we can see it on the inside, you can see that it's basically just sticking inside there. I can animate it, and you can see that it rotates inside the box. It's exactly what we want, so we'll click OK. Right. The next thing we want to do is to add the axle in. So right click, insert into current design. And I'm just going to revolve that around 90 degrees so I can kind of see that it's going to fit correctly. We'll click OK. And I just want to do a planar or a rigid between the axle bushing and the axle. So I'll click joint, change revolute back to rigid. And what I want is for this surface and one corner here to go inside this surface and one of the corners there. And that's great, except it's sticking out the wrong way. Well, fortunately, there's flip here. So if I click flip, it'll flip it around. Now, if you grabbed a good corner and it fits inside the square, that's great. If not, you can still, before you click OK, you can still revolve it until you get it so that it's fitting in there. Either 90, 180, 270. One of those angles will work correctly. Mine worked just fine with 0 degrees. So I'll click OK. And now if I try to rotate one of these parts, you can see that the axle, you can see it kind of inside here. If I revolve the red piece, the axle will revolve. If I revolve the axle bushing revolves with it. So that's looking great. I'm going to save that because I've made a couple good parts that are exactly where I want them to be. And now I want to add another axle bushing down on the other end. So right click, insert into current design. And I'm going to say continue. That just puts everything back to where it was before all those revolves. Rigid, I'm going to change that back to revolute again. And then again, I want to go in here and grab this circle. That grabs the center of that circle. And zoom in here. If you do the surface, you can then select the center. If you select a circle, then it works great in just one click. But it's okay if you do something like this and then you choose the center of it. It'll move it to the correct location. Notice that this time the axle bushing is sticking the wrong direction. So I'll just click flip, puts it on the outside, and click OK. So now the axle and this axle bushing are not joined together. So I want to join those together, but rigid isn't going to work that great because I don't want this out on the end. If I try to do rigid, either it'll give me an error message or Fusion might even quit because it can't solve the math to get this to be stuck on the outside of the box, but also rigid to the end here. So what we're going to do this time is choose planar, and we're going to get a plane of the axle bushing and a plane of the axle to stay together. So click joint, and I'm going to change to planar, and then just choose a plane on the axle like this one, and really any point here. And then I want to choose a plane on the axle bushing, and it really doesn't matter which one of the four planes that you pick. So this is going to kind of do some crazy stuff there, but if you click OK and try to revolve the axle, it'll take the bushing with it. If you try to revolve the bushing, it'll revolve the axle with it. And in fact, if you revolve this bushing, you can see it's going to revolve the other bushing. So that's working great. One last component to add in, and that's the handle. So we'll come down here, insert the handle into our current design. And I'm just going to pull it over here so it's a little bit easier to see. Click OK. And now for this one, I'm going to create a joint. For this one, we're going to do a rigid because that's going to be stuck on it. And I'm going to pick a corner on the surface of the handle on the end of the axle. Again, it thinks I want those two things to be touching each other. I actually want them to flip around. And then this time, it did pick the wrong corner, so I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. Oh, looks like it thinks that's 360 degrees. And click OK. There we go. If I rotate the handle, the axle rotates with it. And you can even see if I rotate the handle here, the bushing on the other end is going to revolve as well. So that's the start to our Automata assembly. The next step is going to be to put some followers and cams into this assembly.